Welcome everybody to our last fall prevention workshop for this week. Thank you all for participating in today's workshop titled Fall Prevention Screening and Getting Up Safely After a Fall. So before I introduce our speaker for today, I'd like to review some general rules for the workshop. Right now, everybody is muted. We are asking participants to stay muted for the duration of the workshop. You will know that you are muted if you see a red / through your microphone icon at the bottom of the screen. Also, all workshops will be recorded and uploaded to our site at a later date for others to review. So if you want to go back and check those out, be on the lookout for those. If you do not wish to have your video appear in the recording, please disable your video. You can do so by clicking on the video camera icon located at the bottom of your screen. To ensure that you do have a good view of the speaker at all times, please select Speaker View. You can adjust the setting in the top right-hand corner of your screen. There will be time for questions and answers if the time permits. So go ahead and please type any questions that you may have in the chat feature box. With that said, our speaker for today's workshop is Judy Verbanets. Judy received a certificate in neurologic specialization from the University of USC. She was an assistant professor at Northwestern University, USC, and Mount St. Mary's University, where she taught physical therapy for balance and fall prevention. She currently practices physical therapy in San Diego and at Sharp Rees-Stealy and specializes in treatment balance disorders. Please join me in welcoming Judy, and I'll let you take it away, Judy.
Okay. I'm just going to put up my PowerPoint here. Okay. Okay, I want to thank you all for joining me today to discover what your falls risk is and how to decrease your probability of falling. And should you fall, how to fall safely if that's unavoidable, and also some methods of getting up from the floor. Why is it important to know what your falls risk is? Well, back in 2012, which was the last time that the San Diego Department of Health and Human Services did a study on fall risk, they found that there are about 350,000 residents over the age of 65 living in San Diego County. Probably a lot more now, since we do have a population of 3.2 million here. Within a year, they found that about half of those individuals did fall. And what's interesting is once an individual has a fall, without intervention, they will fall again within 6 months. San Diego hospitals treat or admit 2 older adults for fall-related injuries every hour. And 1 older adult dies as the result of a fall every 30 hours. So you can see that a fall is a true event and emergency. Sounds kind of dire. However, 40% of all falls are preventable. Why are they preventable? Well, let's look at this graph and these 2 bars. If you draw your attention to the yellow-orange segments of each of the bars, what you find is that the majority of falls are related to slipping, tripping, or stumbling. We would imagine that falls might be occurring because we're falling off ladders, falling off steps, having collisions because of pushing or shoving, but those are only minor. So the slipping, tripping, and stumbling is the major concern. So what causes us to fall because of these slips, trips, or stumbles? How about the environment? If we look at environmental hazards, they're present both in the home as well as outside of the home. Draw your attention to the inside home picture on the left of your screen, and we will address the fact that there's a very slippery floor there, a highly polished wooden floor. can very easily cause you to slip, especially if you're walking in your stocking feet or slippers that do not have a back support to them, you know, the flip-flop type. How about that rug? If it's not very well tacked down to the floor, you could catch your toe and trip over it. Look at the clearance between the furniture. On the far right side, between the coffee table and the chair, there is not as much clearance as there is between on the other side of the coffee table. So say you're distracted and walking around there, very easy to bump into it, trip over it, stumble, fall into the couch or the lamp table. How about lighting? Lighting has to be adequate so that you can see where you're going and whether or not there are any obstacles in your way. Outside of the home, you have the walkways. Are the walkways even? Or do they have cracks in them? Is the brick on either side of the center of the walkway higher or lower so that you could step on it and become unbalanced? Are the steps in good repair and well lighted? Is there a handrail? Is the threshold to get into the house high so that you have to make a high step over it? Does the door open easily, or do you have to pull excessively hard on it, which may cause you to lose your balance backwards? All of these issues should be addressed in your environment and adjusted so that you will be less likely to fall because of a slip, trip, or stumble. Why should we be concerned about this now that we're over 60 years of age? Didn't have to worry about it when we were in our 20s, 30s, or even 40s. Well, how about the concept of fear of falling? People who have fallen often develop a fear of falling, but it's not uncommon for those who have never fallen to have a fear. And they develop this fear because they notice that their balance is deteriorating over time, just not as balanced as they used to be. Maybe a little bit weaker or slower in their movement. As a result of having this fear, people reduce their level of physical activity. When that happens, the energy reserves that you have decrease. Your muscle tone and muscle strength decreases. You're not as alert to your environment, and that actually increases the risk that you will experience a fall. So it becomes a vicious cycle. Restricting or avoiding activities causes a decline in the quality of your life and eventually a withdrawal and decline in mental well-being, and sets you up for an increase in falls risk. Medications are another issue. Oftentimes, as we age, we have to take more medications. Taking 4 or more medications increases your risk of falling. The reason for this is the side effects of the medications. Dizziness. If you're dizzy, high possibility of falling. How about drowsiness? If you're drowsy, you're not alert, you're not seeing those obstacles, you're not responding to them as quickly. Confusion, not being able to assess the situation effectively. Blurred vision, as well as agitation. So these side effects can be present with one or all of your medications. So looking at these adverse medication effects, they happen to be more common in the senior population. Why is that? Well, it's because as we age, our metabolism changes, and there are changes in the ability to metabolize the drugs that you are taking. And this occurs because of impaired liver or kidney function. This doesn't mean that you have to have a disease of your liver or kidneys. It just means that they don't function the way they did when you were in your 20s or 30s, causing there to be less of a clearance of these medications from your systems, and you may actually have more of the medication in your system than you think because they're not being cleared, and then the side effects become intensified. So knowing what are the side effects, and the interactions between the medications that you take are very important. Another thing to consider is anytime you get a new medication, discuss with your doctor whether or not you could take a geriatric dose to start, which is typically about a quarter of the standard dose, see how you respond to it, and then ramp that up over time to the recommended dose for your problem. Vision. As we age, it's not uncommon to get problems with your vision. However, many people never have any of these disease processes occur. One is macular degeneration, and this causes a loss of your central vision. So you can't see what's directly ahead of you, but you still have that side vision. So what's going to happen is you're going to have to turn your head to the side in order to see what's in front of you. That can be a problem with balance. Glaucoma, on the other hand, you have a loss of your peripheral vision. So you're seeing what's in front of you. However, things to the side are not within your visual field, and you may miss an obstacle and trip over it. More common is cataracts, and cataracts cause blurred vision. So it may interfere with some of your depth perception. So you may not be as safe on steps. So be aware of that. Also, impaired night vision. So at night, you have a higher incidence of falling, and you can decrease that incidence by having night lights in your home, as well as a little flashlight beside your bed should you have to get up at night. Also, carry a little flashlight in your car, in your pocket, or your pocketbook. So if you're out when it's light, you come back when it's dark, you'll have that. It'll help you feel a lot safer. How about diabetic retinopathy? If you happen to have diabetes, this is a possibility, and it causes that patchy loss of vision. So you'll have areas within your vision where you have like black spots and you cannot see. Now, these are all disease processes. We also have problems with vision as we age that are just the normal changes that occur with aging. Most of us are probably familiar with that decreased visual acuity. So we go to the doctor, we get our eyes checked, and we get the correct prescription for our glasses. Now, many of us may choose to get bifocals or even trifocals. It is important to be aware that when you get those types of glasses, until you get used to them, you will have an increased risk of falling when wearing them, because you need to be able to figure out where to look through them so you get the right perception of your environment. And this is even more important if you're walking up and down steps, and especially if you're going up and down steps while carrying something. Also, there's slow light to dark adaptation. So if you happen to be in a bright room and you're going to walk into a dark room, realize that it's going to take your eyes maybe 10 seconds or more to adjust to that dark room. So you can help yourself decrease your falls risk in that situation, again, by having night lights in the house, by having a little flashlight available to you, or by being able to turn on the light in that dark room before you step into it. The last thing that happens normally with aging is that we have a smaller visual field or peripheral vision. So again, we're not seeing things out to the side in that periphery as we had in the past. So turning your head and looking and really scanning your environment, especially if you're in an unfamiliar environment. Chronic disease, unfortunately, is something that comes into play as we age, and I just want to address a couple. Arthritis and osteoporosis. Arthritis is a degeneration of the joints, and osteoporosis is a degeneration of the bones. And both of them are associated with the following issues: pain, and pain affects our sleep. So if we're tired and we have that chronic fatigue because we're not sleeping, we're in pain, what happens is Drowsiness affects our ability to move quickly and to make good decisions in our movement. Also, the medication that we may be taking for this pain can cause dizziness, also leading to an increase in falls risk. And finally, activity is avoided because we're in pain or we're just so tired we don't feel like doing anything, or we're dizzy and we're afraid to move. And as you recall from the slide on fear of falling, the more you avoid activity, the more your muscles deteriorate, the more unbalanced you become, the greater the risk for falling. How about heart, that's cardiovascular, or pulmonary, which is lung diseases? These disease processes cause inadequate oxygen to be delivered to the muscles or to your heart. And the result is low endurance. Also, fatigue. You get worn out faster with less activity than you had previously, and weakness occurs. Imagine that you have gone to the mall or to the grocery store and you have to park far away. You get halfway to the entrance and you start to get short of breath because of that low endurance. You're experiencing fatigue, like, wow, it's going to be really hard to go the rest of the way. And all of a sudden, there's this overwhelming weakness in your legs. What do you think might happen? A fall is a high probability. So what do you do in these situations where these chronic conditions exist? Well, the first thing is to try to manage the environment. Go to the store at a time when you know it's less busy and you can park closer. If that's something that's not possible, you might consider, could I have somebody drive me there and drop me off at the entrance and pick me up? If that's not a possibility, how about talking to your doctor about the fact that you can't always walk that distance safely and you're worried about falling, and get a handicap placard that you could use in the car? The final idea is possibly having a cane or a walker that you have in the car for those occasions when you may be at risk for a fall. Also, how about managing your activity level? This is also known as energy conservation. Manage your day. In the morning, don't go and do all your housework and be very active in the home and then all of a sudden decide, oh, I have to go out to the shopping center, I have to go to the store and do this. And then you've used up your energy reserves and you're tired before you even begin to do that. So these are substitution methods that you can use. However, you can also improve yourself and reduce your falls risk through exercise. It's never too late to exercise. And we want to address flexibility, strength, balance, power, and power is actually strength with speed. And finally, endurance. So let's look at each of these types of exercise. Posture is related to decreased flexibility, and posture imbalances increase falls risk. Look at the figure on the right of the screen. A slumped posture weakens muscles and puts the body out of balance. If you look at the line that's going through each of these figures, you will see that the center of gravity on the right figure is shifted backwards. In other words, more of that individual's body is behind the line, so they're already pushed off balance backwards and have a greater risk of falling over backwards. So what can you do in this situation? If you have the opportunity right now, sit in your chair with your feet flat on the floor and about 4 inches apart. Now, pull your stomach muscles in tight so you feel your entire abdomen tighten. Now, simply lift your breastbone up as high as you can while keeping those stomach muscles tight. Just by doing that, you will see that your head comes back over your spine. Now, maintain that position and squeeze your shoulder blades down and back as if you were trying to touch the tips of your shoulder blades to your spinal column. And hold that position for about 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now relax without trying to slump forward or without allowing yourself to slump forward. You now have improved your postural balance. You can do this little exercise intermittently throughout the day, and if you happen to have a slumped posture, over time, if you keep it up, it will help improve that to some degree. Also, spine mobility in rotation and flexibility in rotation decreases. How often do you find yourself standing and reaching to the side, which requires a twist to try and get something? Maybe you're in the bathroom and you've gotten out of the shower and you got to reach for that towel and you got to twist and try and get to it. You must have enough flexibility in your spine and rotation to do that. If you don't, you will simply shift your weight sideways, and that puts you off balance on one leg, and you have a higher risk of falling. Draw your attention to the little lady who has the light blue pants, and she's the second one from the right hand of your screen. She is sitting doing her rotation, and you notice that her hips are very well fixed in place. She is sitting fairly well upright, and she is truly getting that upper body rotation on her lower body. Draw your attention to the lady who's the second from the left, and notice that she is simply leaning over there to her right side. She's not getting that true rotation. So we would want to correct her, have her sit up straighter and do her rotations. You can work on this exercise, maybe doing about 20 repetitions. You do not necessarily have to use a weight. These ladies are using about 2-pound weights, except for the lady with the yellow weights, those are 1-pound weights. So this is another good exercise to do for spinal flexibility during the day. Now, here's some sad news. Muscles normally weaken with age. Sarcopenia is the age-related loss of muscle mass. It affects 10% of those people over the age of 50, and it worsens as we enter the 7th decade or the 70th year. And it's worse in people who are inactive. And it also is important where you start out. Imagine that you were Arnold Schwarzenegger or Jack LaLanne. Both of them, unfortunately, Jack passed away at 96, but he had an incredible muscle mass. He could afford to lose more of that and then say a frail individual and still remain functional and active in his environment. Now, seniors will typically maintain about 45% of their peak strength. This means that they lose about 55%. Well, 50% of that 55% loss, so we're saying maybe 30%, we'll average it out, of the strength loss is related to inactivity. I distinctly remember my mother-in-law who went to work in Washington, D.C. on the subway every day. She had to walk to the subway, take it, get off, go to the library, a conference. She had to lift books up until everything became computerized. Well, she was doing that until she was 78 years old, and she was very active and functional. But unfortunately, she got slower. So when she went to the subway, she couldn't get in it as fast as she needed to, and was very unsafe at that point. So everyone convinced her to retire. Well, what did she do? She had no other real interest, and she never was into doing any kind of exercise. So she sat at home. And within 2 years, she was non-functional and had to go to a care facility. The majority of individuals over the age of 65 cannot lift more than 10 pounds, which is the weight of a typical bag of groceries. So can we intervene in this process of sarcopenia, that muscle weakening with age? Yes, we can, but we have to be committed to exercising. So what muscles should we focus on? How about these quadriceps muscles? These are the muscles in the front of your thighs, and they're indicated in red here. What do? They help us stand up. So are you having difficulty getting up from your couch, getting up from the toilet seat? Do you have to use your hands excessively to push up or pull yourself up? If you do, these muscles are weak. They assist us in sitting down. So we have a controlled sit versus falling down into our chair. They help us walk inclines and hills. And they help us climb stairs, both up and down. So how do we strengthen these muscles? Well, we can sit in a chair and just simply work on straightening our knee, straighten it out, hold it 5 seconds, then let it bend back down slowly. Ideally, you want to do that with at least a 5-pound weight around your ankle, because if you don't stress the muscle with weight resistance, it doesn't change. But say like right now, you had a hard time doing 10 of those with no weight. Well, when you can work up to 10 with no weight, start putting a 1-pound weight on your leg and get to the 10 reps with 1 pound. When that is easy, build it up and gradually build up to those 5 pounds. And this is a good way to do it if you have severe arthritis in your knees. If you do not have severe arthritis and knee pain, the better exercise is to use body weight. And there's 2 ways to do this sit to stand exercise. Note, you do not use your hands to assist you. There's the 5 times sit to stand or the repetitive sit to stand for 30 seconds. So let's look at these. The 5 times sit to stand has been shown to be more of a measure of balance. You should be able to complete this task in 10 seconds or less. Research has shown if an individual is unable to achieve this, it will predict significant functional decline within 2 years. The 30-second sit to stand, on the other hand, is a measure of strength, and you should be able to perform 13 to 15 repetitions in 30 seconds. So say you can't do this now, say you can do 5. Well, you can work on this as an exercise and gradually build it up to improve the strength in those front thigh muscles known as the quadriceps. How about your ankles? It is very common for the calf muscles to be weak in the senior population. If you stand on one leg and go up and down on your toes as high as you can each time for 15 repetitions, you would be considered to have fair strength in that muscle. If you could do it 20 times, you would have good strength. So you can work on this by going up and down on both feet as a starter. Then maybe try to do it 5 times on one leg, 5 times on the other leg. Gradually build that up. These muscles are very important for controlling your forward momentum in walking, and strengthen those muscles actually allows you to walk faster. The hips are also important. The hips are very important for balance control, as well as for walking up and down stairs and inclines and getting up from a chair. The lady on the left is doing a side leg lift. It is important to do the action slowly and to notice that she's lifting her leg without bending over to the side. You would hold the position for at least 5 seconds, lower the leg back down slowly, try to perform 3 sets of 15 repetitions. Again, it's important to build that up to weight resistance. The man on the right is doing the backward leg lift, and notice that he is not lifting that leg very high. Lifting the leg any higher than that would start to affect his low back and cause pain. So you only want to lift so that the toes are about 5 inches off the floor, and you're really concentrating on squeezing that buttock muscle to strengthen those buttock muscles. Now, you also want to consider balance exercises individually. The fellow on the left is standing in a corner for safety, the best place to practice one leg balance. Everyone should be able to balance on one leg for 30 seconds. If you can only balance for 5 seconds, you have a high risk for falling. If you can balance for 20 seconds, it indicates that you have weakness in your legs. So you want to get in that corner. It's safe there. You notice he can touch the walls if he needs to. If he loses his balance backwards, he's just going to, fall into the walls, and he can also catch himself on the wall. Safest way to do it. But you want to practice every day, balancing on one leg. Try as long as you can on one, then go to the other. Try as long as you can on that. Go back and forth, practicing that for at least 5 minutes. You also want to work on heel to toe balance and walking 10 steps in a heel to toe in a straight line. Make sure you have a counter or a wall that you can hold on to so that you can be safe with that. Should you make 2 or more mistakes during that 10-step walk, you are at a high risk for falling. Now, endurance is another issue. What you would want to do to test your endurance is march in place for 2 minutes. Now, here we see the palace guard, and he's going a little overboard with that lift. You would only need to lift that knee to half the distance between your hip and your knee on the standing leg. And you count each step by only counting one leg. So right, left would be 1, right, left 2. So if you are in your 60s, you should be able to do either 97 to 106 steps. If you're in your 70s, 95 to 89. And if you're in your 80s, 84 to 88 steps. These are normal values for those age groups. So say you don't feel comfortable going out and taking a walk around the block. You don't have anybody to do that with you. Well, you can build up your endurance and your speed in walking by doing this 2-minute marching. You could do it 2 or 3 times a day. Get a little bit of aerobic activity into your day. But the best thing to do is to get out there and walk, because we want to increase our walking speed. Reaction times and movement times tend to decrease as we age, and the slower we move, the greater risk we are of falling. To improve your strength and endurance through walking, you want to walk with changes in velocity or changes in speed and walk for longer distances. Aim for 1.5 miles in 30 minutes. To improve your balance through walking, add direction changes, do some weaving, sidestepping, and backward walking. Those who walk faster fall less. So to truly fall-proof your life, you want to maintain good posture and ankle flexibility. You want to keep your thigh muscles, your calf muscles, and your hip muscles strong. You should be able to balance on one leg for 30 seconds. Walk at least 1/4 mile at a 20-minute mile pace. Practice walking at varied speeds and with weaving, direction changes, sidestepping, and backward walking. So the best weekly exercise plan to remain functional in your home in the community with a low falling risk is to do 2 days of strengthening exercises, 2 days of balance exercises, and 5 days of 30 minutes of aerobic exercise that you like or enjoy. You could be walking, stationary biking, going to the pool and doing a water exercise program, like an arthro swim class, if you have arthritis. Or if you're a swimmer, go and swim. There are many different options, but the important thing is to do what you like. And also, if you can get a buddy, it's going to be a lot easier to stick with it. So we've talked about reducing your falls risk and trying to keep you off the ground, but there may be those instances where a fall is inevitable and there's nothing that you can do to prevent it. Let's talk about what you can do to fall and have the least amount of injury during that fall or as a result of that fall. There are 4 steps to falling safely. First, stay bent as much as you can. So if you know a fall is imminent, crouch down, bend those knees. You want to fall with bent elbows and knees to shorten the distance of the fall. That will allow you to reduce the potential for injury. You want to land on big muscles. Land on buttocks, back muscles, or thighs. Don't catch yourself with your hands and your arms outstretched because the risk of breaking your wrist is very high. Roll with the fall and try to land on the meaty parts of your body. Keep falling. Relax your body and don't stiffen up. Roll into a ball and keep rolling. Try to spread out that impact. If you find yourself falling backwards, you want to protect your head. You can see the basketball player there in the blue. He's trying to get that head forward, chin to chest, so he lands more on his buttocks and back with outstretched arms out to the side. You don't want to reach them back and land on the floor with them. You want that total body surface area. He's bending his knees, trying to get a little closer to the ground, then rolling and trying to go with the fall, landing on the buttocks and the thighs. If you're falling forward, turn your head to the side to avoid a face plant and keep your elbows bent to land on the forearms and not on the elbows or wrists. Here, I would like to show a video of falling, and it's important to know that 90% of all hip fractures are caused by falling on or near the hip. So, here we go.
Falls were associated with 15 times greater risk for hip fractures than forward falls. And according to the same study, falling sideways for women was associated with 13 times greater risk for hip fractures than falling forward. According to the CDC, 90% of all hip fractures are caused by falling on or near the hip. Now, this is a quote from another recent broken hip study, and it'll lead us directly into our falling sideways technique. Fall direction was a much stronger predictor for increased hip fracture than low bone strength. When a fall occurs, changing fall direction may be the most effective method of preventing hip fractures. So as we've already talked about, 90% of all hip fractures happen because of contact directly on or near the hip. So when we're falling sideways, the last thing we want is to have contact directly to the hip. So our falling sideways technique is completely based on changing fall direction quickly to avoid landing on the hip. Now I'll give you a bunch of demonstrations here in just a moment, but here's a little background on falling sideways. Okay, the last thing we want is contact directly on the hip. So if we're falling sideways, let's say we're falling to the left in my case, if we're falling sideways, you can see what's going to happen. If I turn my body away from the direction that I'm falling, if I'm falling to the left and I turn my body to the right, you can see what's going to happen. I'm going to fall directly on this hip, and that's the one we want. So here's the big idea. As I'm falling to the left, what I actually want to do, instead of turning my body away from the fall, I want to turn in the direction of the fall. So if I'm falling to the left, what I'll do quickly is turn my body so that I can turn that sideways fall into a forward fall. Now, by turning your body in the direction of your sideways fall, what you're actually doing is greatly minimizing the chances of a broken hip. When you turn your upper body, your lower body will rotate with you. So the whole idea behind the technique is to turn the dangerous sideways fall into a much safer forward fall. Remember the statistics that I told you at the beginning of the section. For women and for men, between 13 and 15 times greater risk for hip fracture lies in falling directly on your side. So by turning in the direction of your fall and making the sideways fall into a safer forward fall, you're essentially taking down the chances of a broken hip by between 13 and 15 times.
Okay, I'm stopping the video there. What you see is that fall is a pretty forceful event. So anytime you fall, you can expect that you will be bruised in some way. However, if you change that sideways fall into a forward fall, and what I wanted to point out with the forward fall is that he had his elbows bent and he was landing on his forearms. And that that distributes the weight more so that there's less of a chance of any broken bones. So that was the key from that particular falling video. Let's go see if I can get to my next one. Okay, now the last thing that I wanted to focus on was, say you find yourself on the floor. You want to learn how to get up from the floor. Are there methods that will allow you to get up from the floor without needing any extra help? Let's take a look at that.
To have in your repertoire in case you do find yourself down on the floor. Begin by simply drawing your knees upwards and reaching your dominant arm across your body to the opposite side. Place your hand down on the floor and push down through that hand while pulling the other elbow backwards underneath you. Extend both arms and come over onto your knees, and then crawl to a stable surface. Raise your strongest leg and push down through your hands in that leg and simply turn and sit down. And once seated, remain seated a few moments to make sure you're okay. If the basic technique doesn't work for you, here's another one you can try. This one's called the tipping point. With this technique, you simply extend your elbows and lift your bottom just a few inches off the floor until you find that nice tipping point where you're able to lean your head and your shoulders backwards onto the couch. And once your weight is supported on the couch, you simply walk your legs to the side, lift your feet up on top the couch, roll over onto your side and drop your legs over the edge, and push yourself upright. If both of these techniques don't work, here's another one you can try. This is called the hip hike. When your hand is on the same side of your body, it's difficult to get enough height to get up on top of the couch. The trick is to reach your hand across your body, lean your head forward, and push down through the arm on the right and the elbow on the left while lifting your hips up on top of the couch. If none of those techniques work.
Those are just 3 different techniques that may be easy for you to use to get up off the floor should you find yourself there. At this point, I'm hoping that you have found some valuable information from this talk, that you've learned what could cause a fall, the slips, trips, and stumbles. you can figure out from the different exercise options that I showed, how to exercise to reduce your fall probability, as well as how to look at your environment, to assess your medications, consider your vision and lighting in your house if you do have visual problems, and avoid a fall in your life, in the community, and in your home, and remain functional. So thank you very much for joining me today.
And there is time for questions. If anybody has any, go ahead and type your question in the chat box. I'll give a couple seconds, minutes. We'll wait just in case. So there is a question. You had mentioned to turn your face when falling forward. Can you elaborate?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What you want to do is, if you know you're falling forward, you want to bend your elbows and bring your arms up in front of your face. But instead of keeping your face forward toward the ground, turn your head sideways to avoid a face plant and land on those forearms.
And there's another one, get up. Another question, get up from falling video. Is there a website to review the moves?
There is. If you go to YouTube and just search for getting up from the floor after a fall, that website will come up for you.
And they're just as a reminder, these workshops were recorded throughout the week, so we will go ahead and have a place for you to go back and review the recording. And then I did receive one question on my end, if for the same thing. Yes. All right, any more questions? Oh, we have a couple more. Will the recording be sent to us by email, or is there a link? I'm gonna actually let my colleague Carolyn, if she has anything to add on that.
Yeah, so we will be editing the videos most likely a little bit, but hope to have them up on our website within a week or two. And we will also be sending the actual recordings to all of the participants who attended any one of the sessions. So we will let you know via email when those links are ready to view.
Great.
How about the PowerPoint? Is it okay to share?
Yeah, so the PowerPoint, that's actually kind of at the discretion of the speakers. If Judy wouldn't mind having that PowerPoint posted, we could certainly do that.
Thank you.
All right, I do have one question, and I hope I'm understanding correctly. When getting hit from behind, how do you make sure you're not hitting your face?
When getting hit from behind,
how do you make sure you're not hitting your face?
so somebody comes up and pushes you from behind and you're falling forward. You want to, again, bend your elbows so that your forearms are in front of your face. And as you're falling, you want to turn your head slightly to one side so that your force will go through your forearms and not land on your face and nose.
Okay. Any? So there's another one. There's another question. Will you be able to download videos including PowerPoints? You can definitely see the video. I'm not sure how and what format the videos will be up, so I'm not sure if you'll be able to download the videos.
I did go ahead and Vilma post in the chat the 2 videos that were shown today. So if you want to copy those links and save them, maybe bookmark them, you can definitely do that.
All right. And I think that's all the questions. Those are all the questions. If anybody has any additional questions, I've put in our Healthier Living email in the chat box. It's healthierliving.hhsa@sdcounty.ca.gov. So any additional questions for our speaker, you can go ahead and email those and we'll make sure to get those over to Judy. And with that said, thank you so much. Thank you to our speaker. Thank you, Judy, for joining us, and everybody else that was able to join us throughout the week. We greatly appreciate you for joining, and we hope that you stay safe and stay engaged. All right.
Thank you for inviting me.